Well, I want to thank you all for tuning in to the BFA audio blog. I am Keith Johnson, unplugged, unedited, and free to say whatever I feel led to say. I'm so excited to be able to talk to you this week, especially in light of the fact that I have completed a major goal. I just finished a 100-hour intensive at Hebrew University. And in fact, what I want to do is I want to actually dedicate this audio blog to a really important question. I'm calling it Why Hebrew, Why Now? You're listening to BFAinternational.com's audio blog, available on iTunes. Like I said, this is Keith Johnson. I've got the Keymaker, who is our producer. He is on Skype. I am in Israel, just in the city of Jerusalem right now. And I want to just say to everyone, I appreciate the fact that you're taking the time to listen. To my friends in Charlotte, it's my understanding, based on what I just heard from the Keymaker, that in the last couple days, there has been a snowstorm in Charlotte. Is this correct, Keymaker? A snowstorm in Charlotte. And I mean, they're calling it the storm of the ages. Now, I'm thinking a snowstorm in Charlotte's like 1 or 2 inches. It's my understanding. I spoke to my wife, Andrea, last night, and she was concerned. She said that they were saying there could be anywhere from 5 to 6 inches. Keymaker, what kind of a snowstorm do they have in Charlotte right now? Give me some kind of sense of what we're talking about here. You've got to be kidding me. Okay, here's the deal. I'm in Jerusalem. You're in Charlotte. The folks are in Charlotte. People are listening in Charlotte. It's my understanding they've shut down the schools. It's a snow day. Before I get started on this BFA International audio blog, I want to offer something, I think, for my friends and for anybody who's stuck in the snow right now, because I'm not stuck in the snow. I'll be honest with you. It was beautiful here in Jerusalem. I spent the entire day out speaking to people of all sorts of different backgrounds and circumstances. I could talk a lot about that. But what I want to do is, do you think there's any way, Keymaker, we could do some sort of special snow day opportunity for people? I mean, for the people in Charlotte. I mean, I'm from Charlotte. I feel for the people in Charlotte. They're stuck at home. What if they had some things that they could listen to? What if they had some things they could read? What if there's some things that they could, to help them to get through this difficult time? Let's do something special. Let's come up with some sort of like snow day sale or something. Could you? Okay, folks, if you're listening to this right now, for the next couple days, in honor of my family and friends in Charlotte, we're going to do a BFA International Snow Day sale. Okay, what do you think? What kind of percentage are you thinking, Keymaker? I mean, what do you think? Is this a big sale? Is this 25%? Are you kidding me? I mean, folks, he's I was thinking more like 10%. What? Okay, all right. It's a 30% discount snow day sale at BFAinternational.com, the store. Which things are we going to put on? What do you think? I mean, let's do a couple things. I tell you what, I'm in Jerusalem right now working on the second series of Time Will Tell, based on the 7th month. You all, if you know anything about the 7th month, the high holy days, some people call it, the amazing revelation coming out of Jerusalem regarding the 7th month. In fact, it's a result of finishing my course. I'm now working on the next thing, and I got to tell you, what I'm uncovering right now is amazing. So this is going to be what we're going to call an honor for our friends in Charlotte in the South that are dealing with snow. It's a BFA Snow Day sale. Well, folks, it is my honor to be able to do that. It's a great idea on part of the Keymaker. He thinks it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea. It's only going to last for a couple days, folks, and we got to get back to trying to do something to keep this thing going. But for right now, we want to do a Charlotte Snow Day sale. It's available right now. BFAinternational.com. The Time Will Tell series 1, right now, 30% off. In fact, also the Clock Crisis, which is connected to Series 1 of Time Will Tell, also 30% off. Push some buttons, make it happen, Keymaker, so that when people are listening to this, they know that they can do that. And by the way, folks, we already have some amazing opportunities in the BFA store. There's so much there that's available, and it's already quite discounted. So if you get this, you're basically no, I'm not saying it's highway robbery. I'm just saying that I mean, you must be like, what do they call that when you get stuck in like a house and you start going stir crazy or something? What's that called, Keymaker? When you get in, you want to get outside, but you're stuck. What is that called? Cabin fever. I'd call it the cabin fever sale, but that's okay. We'll call it the Charlotte Snow Day sale, available right now for the next few days. Hey, let's get right into this, the topic of the hour. I'm calling this audio blog, Why Hebrew, Why Now? I got to be honest with you. I have for the last few years come in contact with people that say Hebrew is important, and certainly I believe that it is important. But I got to be honest with you. I think that there's sometimes where we miss the real importance of Hebrew, and we get into some things that I don't think are necessarily integral to the actual Hebrew language. Now, what I'm going to try to do right now, and folks, I've had some things that have happened in the last few weeks regarding the importance of the language that are just amazing. I wish I could talk all for the next, just hours about everything that I learned over the last few weeks as a student at Hebrew University. But one of the things that I had a chance to do is to have a lecture on the history of the language itself. And of course, those that are familiar with the Hebrew language know that our present day script that we read, for example, in the Hebrew Bible, is not the original script of the actual language of Hebrew. Rather, it has been gone through a process of growth, transformation, so that the letters that we use now do not match the exact letters. They match them in meaning, but they do not match them in form. In fact, I got to tell a funny story, Keymaker. So I get to the first day of class. Now, this is really amazing. The professor opens up the class and won't speak English. I mean, I might have said this before, won't speak English. And so I'm listening. I mean, it's a challenge because, obviously my background is not that I'm around a Hebrew speaking people, though I've studied the language. For me, this is now a formal way for me to study. So I'm listening the best that I can. And then we begin to write. And so I start writing, with the Hebrew alphabet based on the Bible, the Hebrew alphabet, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. You see that if you open up a Hebrew Bible, you'll see the Aleph and you'll see the Bet. And my professor is walking around the room checking everybody's work, and she stops and she says, "I forbid you from writing in that script." No, I'm telling you, this is what happened. Like, she stopped me in front. "I forbid you from writing in that script. We are not writing in that script. We're writing in the modern Hebrew language script, which is called the cursive script." And I'll be honest with you, it's difficult to be able to read when you're used to reading the script that I'm used to reading, to have to switch on the fly. And by the way, what we're doing is we're taking 100 hours of teaching in Hebrew, which normally is over an entire semester, and they're putting those 100 hours in with about a 3.5 day week. So every single day is like you're on what I call I don't know what to call it, but she forbade me from using that. In fact, there were a couple times, Keymaker, where I made a mistake on the test, and instead of putting a bait like there is in the Bible, instead of using the bait like there is in the modern Hebrew, I used the bait like there is in the Bible. She took off a point. No, I'm telling you what happened, like 2 or 3 times. I slipped up. I was under pressure. I used the biblical script, and she took off a point. So instead of getting 100, I got like a 95. Okay, I'm not trying to brag, but the bottom line is I was pushed to the brink in this class. Well, here's what happened. We had a lecture on the history of the Hebrew language, and I got to tell you something. It was so amazing. Now, for those who don't know, the present day modern Hebrew language is nothing short of a miracle. In the history of languages, there's never been a sacred language that became a national language. In the history of languages, there's never been a situation where you have a dead language becoming alive, and no example of it actually becoming, as I mentioned earlier, the national language. So literally, the Hebrew language, which was a dead language for the last couple thousand years, was resurrected. How was it resurrected? There were some people at different times, the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century, who were committed to having Hebrew come back alive through the mouths of the people. Now, one of the most famous people is a man named Eliezer ben Yehuda. And what I love about his story is that Eliezer ben Yehuda, when he decided that he wanted to see this resurrection of the language, he began sort of like these Hebrew speaking clubs, very small. And then from there, he ended up making a trip to Palestine with his family, with his wife. And this is a great story, Kingmaker. He tells his wife this. He says, "My dear, when we get off this boat, it will be the last time that I speak to you in any other language than the Hebrew language. And so she was put into a crash course on Hebrew. He hadn't had children. And his children, he had one son and one daughter, and he, from the beginning of their birth, taught them the Hebrew language, never spoken any other language other than that. Great story. He wanted to be able to have the children be able to speak to one another in the language of Hebrew. Now, the Hebrew language, you have to be male and female. In other words, when you say something, it's not like English. You know, in English, sometimes we can, hey, you, da, 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 and you don't know if that you is feminine or masculine. Well, in Hebrew, it's very clear if you're speaking to the feminine or the masculine. I could talk a lot about that. I'm not going to. But in the language of Hebrew, you got to be able to do male and female. So what he did for his children, you're still with me, Keymaker, because this is a great story. What he did for his children is he got them a dog and a cat. And the dog was the male and the cat was the female, so that the daughter could speak to the cat, female to female, or to the dog, female to male, and the same thing. Well, story is that because they were teaching their kids this Hebrew language, but it was not popular in their community, the other children heard the sacred language being spoken to a dog. Now let me get this straight. Now. He's teaching his kids the Hebrew language. Now the children had heard the Hebrew language in the Beit Knesset. You know, when they go for Shabbat or when they'd have the high holy days, they would hear the language prayed. They would hear the language read, but never on the street. And then to hear a kid speak the holy language to a dog, they stoned the dog. No, I'm telling you what happened. They killed the dog because they said, what are you doing teaching, speaking this holy language to a dog? Long story short, Eliezer ben Yehuda began to get other people around the country speaking. He'd start clubs. But it's amazing. After 20 years, what they would do is they would ask people, they would say, hey, listen, we want you to be able to commit to being able to speak only Hebrew. And so they would make them make a commitment. And the commitment would be only Hebrew. Well, guess what happens? After 20 years, his wife, who would bake a cake for each family that would make this commitment after 20 years, she only made the 10th cake after 20 years. In other words, there was no amazing movement, but it was an important movement that started right then. In fact, what we understand is that his son, whose name is Itamar ben Avi, the son of Eliezer ben Yehuda, he started a campaign after World War I that basically said that when the people were in the place of Tel Aviv, I believe it was in Tel Aviv, he started a campaign where if you would hear someone speak in anything other than Hebrew, they would go to them and say, Yehudi diber ivrit. Yehudi diber ivrit, which means Jewish men speak Hebrew. And this actually took place. And so people around the country began to speak. Long story short, it ended up that this became the national language. It's now the language of the land of Israel. Millions of people speak the language of Hebrew. And so it is what I call, not what I call, it's what the linguists call and people around the world call, literally a miracle that started in very small ways. But now everywhere you go in the land of Israel, wherever you're from, people are actually speaking Hebrew. So as I mentioned, it really is a nothing short of a miracle to have a language that was quote unquote dead be brought back alive, resurrected literally in the land of Israel. So when you're here, you hear people from all over the world that are speaking this amazing language. Now back to the lecture. The lecture with the professor when he's talking about the root of the Hebrew language. It was fascinating, a fascinating lecture. Got a chance to ask a lot of questions. And there's a very popular movement, obviously, that's taken place in the Hebrew Roots movement where people talk about the word pictures of the Hebrew language. In fact, when I first was excited about relearning Hebrew after learning it in a seminary, it was a really cool thing to start dealing with the issue of the word pictures in the Hebrew language. The problem is, however, there are some people that make that the only way that they study the language, which is actually just a disservice to the language. But going back to the root of it, he did a powerful presentation on this, and so I'll just give you an example, Keymaker. I know I don't know if you know. Have you ever heard about the word pictures? Have you ever heard about the word pictures in the Hebrew language? That every letter is a picture, and from that people come up with all sorts of. You have heard that. Yeah, well, the Keymaker knows it's called Paleo Hebrew, which is excellent. So we had a lecture on Paleo Hebrew, which was amazing. And there's so many things that I could talk about, but I want to talk about just one, which has to do with this issue of word pictures. Now, again, I think it's a phenomenal thing that the Hebrew language is both numerical, it actually is phonetic, and it actually is this wonderful language where originally when it was written, the pictures actually were creating words, so that when you have the word, for example, I'll give you an example. One of the letters is mem, which in Paleo Hebrew represents, the picture would be water. Now here's the part that most people don't know, which I'm going to tell you, is that actually in the Egyptian language, mem, the sound m also is sort of created but looks like water. So basically the Egyptian language, about 6,000 years or so ago, used the hieroglyphics, where to this day you can go and look at Egyptian language and you can see that one of the pictures is what looks like several M's together, which is water. Now, here's what's interesting. In the Hebrew language, we've got 22 letters which have these pictures. Now, what some people have done is they've gone past what the actual language means and to the point of its purpose of the sound of m, and crossed all that off and said, let's just deal with the word picture of water. Now, here's where this gets a little crazy. Sometimes people take these word pictures and do theology with them, which really becomes a problem. Now, I'm going to give you an example why this is important. Imagine this. Let's use this letter M as a word picture. Imagine that 2,000 years from now, they did a search and they found this guy named Mr. Martinez. Okay, it's called Mr. Martinez. That's just a fictional guy. His name is Mr. Martinez. And they said, well, we know that M represents water and R represents head. So he would be called Waterhead. I'm like 2,000 years from now, they went back and said, okay, everyone who has an M and an R before their name is called Waterhead. Now, you'd think, okay, present day, we'd say that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Better yet, they say this. We found a restaurant. And the restaurant is represented by the ancient letter M. And come to find out, that was a water restaurant. Now, we know it's McDonald's between you and me. But in the future, they'd look back and say, no, we found this amazing restaurant. It's all over the world. It's got the picture of an M. It means that they served the best water in the world. In fact, everything they were about were water meals, water burgers, everything was water based on the picture of an M. Now, of course, that sounds ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. And let me just say this. If you don't study the language as it was intended, you can get to some pretty ridiculous places that may be exciting, but are not based on the intention of the language. What the professor said was this. The purpose of the M wasn't so much the picture, it was the sound. So, for example, when you see the word picture M, we're supposed to be able to say like McDonald's or Mr. versus let's come up with a deal that the first M means water and the second letter means head, so it's waterhead. It's ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous. And to those who know Hebrew and to my professors and those that are studying the language, when I ask them about sort of this progression of the word pictures as a way to study the language, they short of laughing, they just say you just can't do that because it breaks down. So I gave you an example. But let me give you now something really exciting that happened. And for those that do study the word pictures, I'm with you on that. I think it's a phenomenal thing. In fact, at Israel Museum, the first time I ever saw the word pictures was at Israel Museum. And there you'd see Aleph, the ox, the head, the leader. And I mean, it really is fascinating. But you got to stop short of creating theology or making that the only place to study. Don't be offended. It's just the way that it is. Now, let me end with this. I'm at Hebrew University. I'm the only Methodist there, Keymaker. And in fact, not only am I the only Methodist there, I'm the only brown Methodist there. if you know what I mean. I mean, there are people from around the world. Literally, in my class alone, we were at level 5 or something. There were about 7 countries represented. Well, on the second day, I look outside and I see a van pull up. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, I looked out and out of the van comes about 7 or 8 African men. And they're coming into the building, this international school where we're learning Hebrew. And after about a day or so, we finally got a chance to kind of talk. And so I'm talking to these men and I said, so where are you from? They said, from Africa. What part of Africa? We represent 6 countries. Why are you at Hebrew University studying language? Now, they were in the very beginning level, many of them in the very beginning level of understanding the Hebrew language. It's complicated, but basically they were there in the beginning. Over time, I got a chance to talk to them. At Keymaker, could I do something? You know what? I actually did something. Rather than me telling you the story, can I bring you and the listeners to my interaction with these 8 African men from 6 African countries who came to Hebrew University specifically to learn this language, and why they came to learn this language has blessed my heart. Let's take a listen right now to what happened when I brought my trusty BFA audio blog recorder to talk to my 8 African friends. Okay, go ahead.
Maya Burkinani.
My friends, hey, I met you here at the Rothberg International School. Yes. Tell me what countries you're from.
Chad,
Burkina Faso.
Ivory Coast.
Burkina Faso, Togo.
Okay, so you're from different countries, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Why are you here learning Hebrew?
Okay, I'm here to learn Hebrew in order to translate the Old Testament or the whole Bible in my language, in Ife, to my people in Togo.
Okay. You know, we have 60 ethnic groups. An ethnic group need to hear the word of God, so we are here to learn Hebrew, to translate the Bible in this language.
How long have you been waiting to come here?
How long?
Yes.
6 months.
6 months? You'll be here 6 months?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, how long have you been waiting? Like, what if you've been praying for it and wanting to come to Hebrew University?
Okay, many people are praying for us, and we are here to learn Hebrew in order to translate more better the Bible in our mother tongue.
Okay.
Because many of our people couldn't understand French or English. That's why it's important for us to translate the Bible.
Is it true that in some countries there are more than 10 language dialects?
Yes, it's true.
30 dialects?
Yes,
50 dialects?
Yeah.
For example, in Togo, we have 42 dialects.
In one country?
We have 60.
60?
60, Burkina Faso.
Yes.
If you travel from your place and you're speaking in your mother tongue, how many miles will you travel until you will be someone speaking another tongue?
In my country, when I travel around 200 kilometers, it's impossible to find another man who speaks the same language like me.
It's the same,
Not at all.
same case in my country, called Ivory Coast.
If you would travel less
Less 100 miles.
Okay.
Cannot.
Chad,
126 language.
126
language.
Is it true that you're creating alphabet for some of the dialects?
Yes, we have, for example, in my language, you have already created the alphabet, and we have the syllabus, and we are doing with the literacy to teach my people to read and to talk better, to speak better their language.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question.
Sorry. In my mother tongue, we have 38 letters. Yeah, we use to write.
Wow.
38.
38.
Okay, now this is my
Has the
question.
alphabets.
Why don't you just use the English Bible to give to the people?
English is not the original language of the Bible.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's not the original.
English
Wait,
is,
you want to learn you're here to learn the original language of the Old Testament.
Yes, yes.
You understand that it's a difficult.
the source.
Yes.
You want to under the source.
Yes, because
Sorry.
the Bible, the
English Bible
Yeah.
is fault and
not
errors.
false, but it is a translation.
It's translated.
So we can
To take a translator to translate it in a Harman.
No.
Wait a minute. So you come all the way to the
Original.
Oh, wait a minute.
Source.
You want to go to the source?
Yeah.
Original.
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 Okay, so you're here for how long?
for 6 months.
6 months.
And there are how many countries represented in this group?
6
Six countries,
Yes.
8 men,
8 men.
who will come here and they will learn the Hebrew language for 6 months,
Yeah.
and they will translate it in the dialect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's give God praise.
Amen.
Ah.
Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem.
Okay, now I want you guys to do me one last thing. I want you for 1 second to speak to each other now in the littlest language you know in Hebrew, like shalom, hello. Okay, now go just speak to each other in Hebrew. Go ahead, speak, say hello to each other.
Manish, shalom.
Shalom.
Ani Somé,
Ani Serge.
Ani Burkina Faso, Veata,
Ani Bayami Mechat.
Toda.
Ah, Yafé.
Yeah.
Toda
Toda.
Amen. Okay, so you can see why that was so exciting to me. Here these men are. They are from different backgrounds, but they're all committed to being able to translate the part of them, the Hebrew Bible, which is the Old Testament, quote unquote. They want to be able to translate it from Hebrew into the dialect of the people. Now, let me tell you why this is so exciting and why I got to be honest with you, Keymaker. I was so blessed to see them, because if you understood what they're committed to, they're going to be at Hebrew University for 6 months. The first part of their time there is specifically to learn the modern Hebrew language. Then for over 4 months, they're going to be studying biblical Hebrew with a professor who is dedicated only to teach these 8 African men biblical Hebrew. Now, these men happen to come from Christian backgrounds. A few of them are pastors, some of them are theologians, some of them are translators, but they all love God and they love the people, and they want to go through the hard work, and excuse my excitement. They want to go through the hard work of giving their people the Hebrew Bible in their language, direct from Hebrew into the language. Now, it's difficult. Translation is always difficult, but their point is we don't want to do any shortcuts. Now, for those who oftentimes are so negative against my Christian brothers and sisters, the pastors, the churchmen, the theologians, these people that and sometimes get such a bad rap. I got to tell you something. What they're doing right now is such a commitment to their love of God. And when they talk about their ministry, when they think about Jesus, Yeshua, who many of us call Yeshua, and they think about what he did and how he did it and how he walked and sending people into Judea and to Samaria and to the ends of the earth, here these men are coming from the ends of the earth to the very land where for them, this is their first time in Israel. So they're overwhelmed. First thing that happens, they go into a class and the teacher's speaking in Hebrew and they're learning Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey. Why? Because they believe they're called to give people an opportunity to interact with the Hebrew Bible to the best of their ability and getting it into the language that they would understand. How can you not honor those men? How can you not honor the mission that they're on? I challenge anyone that's negative towards men like that to go through what they're going through. You have no idea the commitment that it takes. Now, I'll tell you what I think is really happening, and I'll close this off. I think the Father's doing something that's amazing. In fact, one of our professors said this. 15, 20 years ago, a lot of the people that were coming to understand Hebrew, many of them were from Israel, as they were, they wanted to learn more, are from Russia, or from Germany. Now, guess where most of the people are coming from? People are coming from the United States. People are coming from Africa. People are coming from Korea for one purpose: to get a hold of the language in its original context. And it's exciting, Hebrew University, that they now have people from around the world, specifically places like Korea. One of my friends on from Korea couldn't speak much English at all. Said his head was hurting, not because he was physically sick, but he was overwhelmed. And after a week, he got into it. He put his hands into it, and he's going to take that back. And why did he come? He wants to be able to read the Bible as it was written, the Hebrew scriptures as it was written, and be able to help others to do the same. Let me tell you what I think is happening, and I will close with this. There is a wonderful verse, and if you would open your Bibles, if you have it, or if you don't, just stop the recording right now and open up the Tanakh to a wonderful verse. I love this verse. It's in Zephaniah, and I'm not even going to ask you to have to find this key maker. I've got my Bible here. I'm in Jerusalem right now, folks, and I got to tell you something. I'm in the land of the language. I'm with the people of the language. This is the language of the prophets. This is the language that when Moses heard the words from God, God could have spoken in German. He could have spoken in Swahili. But for some reason, he chose the Hebrew language. And that language has then been translated and brought throughout the world. And now people from around the world with the dead language have now come back to the land. Millions of people are speaking the language of Isaiah, the prophets, of Yeshua. They're speaking the language. And now people are learning it everywhere. Here's what I think is happening. It's prophetic. It's a call to what's going to happen in the future. It says in Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9, these words: "Then will I purify the lips of the peoples, that all of them may call on the name Yehovah." And what I love about it, what I love about this is that if I open up my Hebrew Bible, and I tell you what, you all do this for me. Check if you can with the tools. Check if you can what it says in Hebrew. It'll bless your socks off. What I love about it is it's happening now. He's purifying the language of those in Africa. Many of those in Africa, they did not have a clue about the Hebrew Bible. All they had is what they were given. And what I love about the testimony of these 8 men, they've said, hey, we appreciate what the missionaries did. They gave us a chance to interact at one level. Now we want to get it for ourselves and give it to our people. How can you not honor that? I'll tell you what, I believe that right now we are at a time in history like no other time, where people around the world are coming into an encounter with the Father whom Yeshua talked about all the time. And it is this Father whom we want to honor, whom we want to love, whom we want to encounter in a way that can change our lives. I pray that those of you that are listening would be inspired to dig a little deeper, that those that are listening would be willing to check a little further. But whatever you do, I would like to challenge you to keep listening, to keep reading, and even keep watching. And we will keep working.